Graham Matthews, Bleacher Report, Fan Sided, Daily DDT. My man, how you doing?
Doing well, Randy. A little congested, but I am here to help you break down 2020 in a nutshell for WWE. Looking forward to it.
Well, first of all, hope you feel better.
Thanks.
Happy New Year.
It's not anything super serious. I don't want to get any COVID scares out there. It's just a little congestion. So,
Well, Happy New Year to you and the family. Hope you are well now and more and beyond.
you as well, Randy.
We haven't done this 2 out of 3 full show in quite some time, so I want to let people know that we are still doing it. Just a matter of fact that our schedules happen to not be intertwined at the same time. Me in 2020, as we're doing a recap kind of year show, I, as a fan, checked out more than I thought I would. And I'm doing the best I can to kind of chime in and watch certain shows. And I haven't seen every Raw, I haven't seen every SmackDown or every Dynamite.
Yep.
But my goal for 2021 is to just check in. I know it's hard for most fans to watch where there's no fans in the building.
Yep.
They don't get that kind of interaction. So I do get that part. But for me, for my own personal goal, I want to watch more of the product because there are some things that you educate me on and say, hey, I know you don't watch it as normal as regular, but you could check out this match and check out this rivalry, check out this storyline. You know, this is the best thing going on in the company and everything. So this show, I'm going to heavily rely on you because I know you've seen majority of Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, other shows and whatnot. So this year in review is going to be more on you, man.
That's perfectly fine with me. I'm perfectly in my element, reliving the best and worst moments of 2020 for WWE and beyond.
Mm-hmm. Man, where do we start? Good question. Where do we start? Okay, so Graham, since the whole pandemic came in, I think both companies, AEW and WWE, were kind of hitting the strides prior to the pandemic. So we're talking about January, February, and March. So the last show that I went to was the Chamber pay-per-view in March.
The last pay-per-view with fans, yeah.
With fans. So right after that is when like stuff with the NBA, the NFL, every other sport, and then boom. And that's pre-WrestleMania time.
Yep.
And great show, great atmosphere, but now that feels like such a long time ago. It feels kind of old. Like now, like man, with 17,000 people in an arena, and you haven't seen that in quite some time.
Yeah.
And it's just surreal, man. I think it's as we do this show, it kind of shows you, when things come your way, adversity. What do you do? Personal, keeping your company alive. And I think AEW and WWE have done the best that they can in order to keep everything going, keep people occupied, and just engaged. And I know the ratings have been going down, but still, it's like, what else can you do? Like, they're gonna do the best that they can. And I think, for what it's worth, and stuff that's out of their control, I think they done pretty well.
Excuse me, I'm dying right off the bat here. No, I completely agree though. The products, I think overall, and this might be the optimist in me, have made the most of the current circumstances, specifically AEW, because they got a head start in the whole not having fans in the building. They do have fans in the building now, very small amount, but they were using the wrestlers as the audience for a very long time, well before WWE did. When WWE started using the PC recruits at the PC, that came about 2 months after AEW. AEW, I think, was doing it with like their first or second show at Daly's place in Jacksonville. And it really added to the atmosphere of the shows because AEW, as good as the shows are, they were typically only as good before the pandemic as their audience that they had in attendance. And the crowds were almost always electric every single time. And the AEW crowds were always great. A lot like NXT, a lot of their shows are special because of the crowds. You don't really see that more often than not with Raw and SmackDown. So they kind of filled that gap to the best of their ability with the wrestlers in the audience for AEW, and then later some fans, now just socially distanced, wearing masks and whatever. But yeah, I think both companies rather, have made the most of it. There's still a lot worth complaining about. AEW is far from a perfect product. There's a lot of issues I have with that product, but overall, every Wednesday is a great watch. We've had a lot of great moments in 2020. WWE Raw's quality has fallen in the toilet in the last, I would say, 6 to 8 months or whatever. Not because of the pandemic, that doesn't help. A lot of other factors. I mean, it was a bad show a year ago. You go back to our year review show a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I'm pretty sure I was saying the same thing. Raw was a dumpster fire. And there are times where it's good and better than other times. And then there's times where it's just almost completely unbearable to watch, like the last couple of weeks of Raw. This week, as we speak, wasn't too bad, but the last couple of weeks before that were pretty bad. But SmackDown's been killing it lately. NXT's still a very good show. So, yeah, I mean, the pandemic, I think a lot of people assumed, oh, this is the death of wrestling. It'll never be the same. And it's definitely not the same. I know a lot of people, like you said, that said they are not watching WWE, AEW, whatever, without fans because it's not the same. It's a weird experience. And I totally get that. But I feel like if you enjoy wrestling that much, you will try to find the positives in it. And sometimes it's hard, especially with WWE, but there are positives here and there. And there are a few cool things going on right now on the WWE front. The Royal Rumble's coming up in a couple weeks. Again, not the same without fans in attendance. But overall, the pandemic has also allowed them to do some cool things that we wouldn't have gotten had it been for the pandemic, such as cinematic matches, which they have kind of done to death over the last 8 months, but the cinematic matches have been cool. We've had some pretty cool arrivals, debuts, gimmick types or match types, gimmicks and stuff like that. So they've tried to make the most of it. I applaud them for it. And the longer that this thing has gone on, a lot longer than any of us thought it would, they've put their best effort into it, and it's actually become more bearable. So to me, the no fans thing doesn't even really bother me anymore as much as bad content does, which both companies can be guilty of at times.
And you know what? I agree because I feel like when I chime in whenever I can, I tend to chime in more to SmackDown than Raw nowadays.
Okay.
And to your point, I just don't know what it is with Raw. Again, Graham, you know me, I come from the era of attitude and ruthless aggression, and I've seen it all. Even the PG era and the reality era and the era we were in before COVID. It just, again, like, you can do wonders without fans. It just what you see out there is that, again, I could be as tedious as can be, but like just the effort, just the selling, the acting, like I'm like, it just doesn't seem as, it don't come off as real as it could be.
Yep.
Nowadays. Now, I'm not saying they don't know how to work or they're terrible. It just, the portrayal of what they're showing is not like, it's not believable to a degree.
Yeah.
And again, you were missing some big stars. There was no Brock. There's no Becky Lynch. A good portion, there was no Charlotte Flair. A little bit, you had no Roman Reigns. So you had to have these other people who don't primarily get that TV time, and you had to uplift and elevate them to an audience. And like me or someone who's casually watching, I flip on and I see, for example, Rey Mysterio's son, Dominic.
Yeah.
Am I going to see Dominic or Brock Lesnar or Becky Lynch or Seth Rollins or whoever? So it was a weird time. They did some things really well. Like, oh shit, I was kind of cool. They went outside the box with the whole cinematic stuff, which we'll get to for WrestleMania and stuff like that. Even for, I think, NXT in your house with the outside ladder match, and they got creative to a degree. I just felt like Raw is hard to watch because I just feel like the effort is not there as a television production show, not the wrestling, just how it's portrayed on TV.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's not the wrestling. The wrestling, I would say, is as good as it's not as good as it's been, because there have been other points where consistently the wrestling has been better. But like, the no fans thing doesn't help. But certain storylines, dragging things on for longer than they should, rushing into certain things, I find that's, again, more of an issue with Raw than it is with SmackDown. But again, the pandemic you made a great point there, Randy, has allowed them to push some new stars in 2020. Not every single one has been a home run. For example, Keith Lee, they called up to the main roster, gave a push to pretty quick. He's not at the level I think he should be at. Of course, he's contending for the WWE title next week on Raw after beating Sheamus last week on the show. But they had him beat Randy Orton at Payback, and then he lost a few times on TV. He got pinned in like a handicap match versus Miz and Morrison. Before recently, the guy had never meant less on the show. So his booking's kind of been all over the place, but it has forced them to push him in a prominent role on the show. Riddle they called up in 2020. Bianca Belair's a star on the rise. Dominic Mysterio. The Street Profits went from being just a random unknown tag team a year ago to now reigning as the tag team champions every single day of 2020, dating back to March. So not the entire year, but they were the Raw tag team champions and then immediately transitioned without ever dropping the titles into becoming the SmackDown tag team champions. Big E. I mean, look at the push that Big E has gotten since the summer with Kofi being out, Xavier being out, and they ran with Big E. And now, as of last Friday on SmackDown, he's the new Intercontinental Champion, which is super cool to see. Roman Reigns. I mean, Drew McIntyre is probably the biggest star they created in 2020 with how they booked him. They had him drop the belt for a couple weeks to Randy Orton, but other than that, the guy has had an amazing 2020. And in my opinion, having been here all 2020 long, never taking any time off, never getting hurt, barely missing any pay-per-views, he is my superstar of the year for 2020, probably my wrestler of the year as well. And that includes AEW. AEW had a lot of great talent too. Cody Rhodes had a pretty good year. John Moxley was champion for the better part of 2020. But McIntyre has been firing in all cylinders. And I don't want to say everything on Raw is bad. McIntyre, and the ratings aren't poor because of McIntyre being champion. We are well past that point of whoever being champion being the reason why the ratings are in the toilet. That's I'm not saying like, oh, the ratings are so bad, you got to put the belt on a bigger star like Brock again. I mean, that's not going to help it at all because Brock's never on the show. So I hope that we're done with that crap in 2020 and we can get a year for the first time in many years where Brock is not a champion in WWE, whether it be on Raw or SmackDown, world champion, that is. But at any rate, so Drew McIntyre really took the year by storm, was a great WWE champion, stepped it up in the ring, stepped it up as a promo guy, as a character, had a lot of good feuds, good moments, good matches, main event at WrestleMania. Won the Royal Rumble, one of my favorite Royal Rumbles ever. That was a fantastic match. Had Roman Reigns been around longer, doing what he's doing right now for longer, he would probably be a lot of people's superstar of the year. Because as much as I like McIntyre, if you had to make me choose to watch one superstar right now in any show, it would be Roman Reigns, which I never thought I would say. And it's not that I'm a Roman Reigns hater, but this is the best work this guy has ever done. He was very bland, very generic. You knew what you were getting with Roman most of the time before he turned heel. But since the Paul Heyman partnership came about, the guy has been literally must-see TV. Whether it was the Jey Uso stuff when he first came back, winning the Universal Championship, aligning with Paul Heyman, his recent rivalry with Kevin Owens going into TLC and now currently still going on SmackDown, the mini Drew McIntyre feud, the mini Drew McIntyre match at Survivor Series, everything this guy has touched has literally turned to gold. Maybe not quite literally, but you get my point. So the guy has been awesome in 2020. There's been a lot of positives for the year. A lot of stuff I didn't really care for. Dominic Mysterio, you mentioned, really came out and had a great 2020. He looked like a natural in the ring at SummerSlam against Seth Rollins. The feud itself died a death after SummerSlam. The whole, Aaliyah Mysterio bullshit and the eye for an eye crap. I mean, that was just bad. That shit was just really, really bad. But the matches were good, at least for those first few months. Even in NXT, people will say, oh, it's not the same anymore. It's not as exciting, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's completely subjective. I'm not going to say the weekly product is as good as it's ever been right now, but their women's division is as good as it's ever been, bar none. It's not even close. Pat McAfee, I mean, the guy showed up on the scene. No one really gave a shit about him. Neither did I 4 months ago. Went in the ring with Adam Cole, TakeOver 30, and fucking killed it. And the guy is, and he's not on the show right now. He kind of took time off after TakeOver War Games earlier this month, but he was a must-see part of that show as well. So it's been a good year, I would say, for WWE. I hate to say it's been a good year for anything, considering what's happened in 2020, the people that we've lost, and everything that's happened even outside of wrestling. But from a pure product standpoint, I have seen worse years in WWE. And AEW, again, I think made the most of the current circumstances. And they have now gone longer without fans than they were with fans, which is kind of crazy to think about. But some of the matches speak for themselves. We had a lot of great matches in 2020. So even without fans there, they've still managed to put out some great content across all the shows.
Okay, that was a lot. I
It was a
appreciate
lot. I apologize.
that. So let's go back here. Question one: post COVID, who's had a better who's done better production wise, AEW or WWE, which includes NXT? Who you think felt has who you felt has done better when it comes to shows, pay-per-view events and stuff like that?
Well, you mean in terms of like the shows they've put on, or like how they present the shows production wise?
I mean, when you're watching AEW, NXT, and all that stuff from March to now,
Yep.
you as a fan, you
Yep.
have enjoyed which the most?
Oh, I would say AEW, definitely.
And why is that? Why is that?
The matches have been better. They have, again, it never really felt like they missed a beat. Like, I don't watch AEW and think to myself, oh, the show would be so much better if there were fans there. Like, I feel that way with NXT because I feel like a big part of the NXT magic, and I think NXT is still a very good show. I mean, they had one of their best shows all year a couple of weeks ago. And New Year's Eve, I think next Wednesday is shaping up to be an incredible show. Like, that feels like a takeover worthy event on paper, and it's on free TV. But with AEW, I feel like even as soon as the pandemic started, the shows were still, I mean, again, some shows are better than others. The last couple of weeks of Dynamite have been kind of dull since the big Sting debut. Every episode since then has kind of honestly gotten gradually more and more boring, but I feel like that's just they're kind of holding off until the bigger stuff until the new year. And then they're putting all their plans on pause for right now for the Brody Lee stuff on Wednesday, which I think is incredibly cool. So I'm looking forward to that tribute show on Wednesday. But yeah, just overall AEW, I feel like NXT doesn't have that same magic without an audience, and having the PC people there is one thing, and the Capitol Wrestling Center has helped. WWE's Thunderdome has been a big help. Like, people can shit on the Thunderdome and the flaws that it has and whatever, the fake crowd noise. I will take that shit any day of the week over no noise.
Or the PC.
What'd you say?
Or the PC. That was terrible. I couldn't watch it in the PC.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Whether it be with people in the PC or without people in the PC, like the banging on the glass, I felt like I was watching a fucking hockey fight. Like, again, I appreciate their attempt to make it bearable, but it was tough. It was really tough. Like, making Brock Lesnar go out there, make his entrance with no fans was hard to watch. The Thunderdome gives it a bigger feel, and again, there's no actual fans there, but I can appreciate and enjoy the shows more than I would have without it. And I think since SummerSlam, they've had the Thunderdome. SmackDown's been a better show since then. Raw, not so much, but that's just really because of the creative stuff and not so much the lack of fans. I feel like even if fans were there, we would be shitting on Raw. Like, people have been pooping on Raw for years. So fans or no fans, yeah, it makes it, less and more of a hard watch to watch it without fans. But even with fans, the show sucked anyway. So it's not like it lives and dies by that. But yeah, just Dynamite. I think Dynamite, well, again, I have my flaws with the show, probably more than most. I call them out on their shit. I think the win-loss record stuff is stupid just because they don't really follow it. Like the power rankings, I think, are dumb. They don't really follow it. But they have signed a lot of people in 2020, and they have made good use out of pretty much anyone, pretty much everyone they've had. The only few people I could say had a disappointing 2020 were Joey Janela, who I've never really cared about, but he was a guy that kind of hyped up from the beginning, had a big indie, presence and whatnot before coming to AEW. He's been kind of a background player. I can't say I'm complaining just because I really don't care about the guy. And Rusev, they hired Miro, who's now known as Miro, formerly Rusev. He's done jack shit. He's like a fucking video game guy now. That just really doesn't make any sense to me at all. And everyone else, Matt Hardy's made an impact. Brody Lee, rest in peace, just passed away last weekend, made an impact while he was there. He was TNT champion for a short time, and what a shocking passing that was this past weekend. But for as long, it was cool that before he passed, he was able to have a very good run to close out his career and wasn't sitting on the sidelines like he was in WWE for his final year or two there. In AEW, he was able to, become a champion, lead a faction, get a world title shot at Double or Nothing. I think WWE's had better cinematic matches, I would say, than AEW, but from an in-ring standpoint, I think WWE's also probably had a better year from an in-ring standpoint too. I just feel like AEW is more consistent, and that's why I enjoy the show more. I feel like with WWE and even NXT, honestly, too, from time to time, I feel like when I watch Raw and SmackDown and sometimes NXT, it could be a really boring show or a really, really good show. Like, they go back and forth constantly. At least with AEW, it's a very good show more often than not. They got Steve. They have stuff you can kind of sink your teeth into, and they have some fans there. They have the crowd noise. That's never really been a problem. They deliver big moments. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. The booking makes sense. I just enjoy the shows more. And again, the last couple of weeks of Dynamite have been kind of ho-hum, but I expected that in the final stretch of the year during the holiday season, so I can't say I'm overly surprised. Like the Sting debut was awesome. They did the John Moxley Kenny Omega title change with the Don Callis swerve a couple of weeks ago. That was really cool. They've done a lot of other cool stuff in 2020. So I would say overall, from a which product I enjoyed more standpoint, AEW wins in that respect.
So who do you feel, and you can educate me on this, who do you feel is your MVP for AEW for the year? Like someone who's like, man, from this point to now, man or woman, every time they came on the screen, they hit it out the park. Someone who can now go into 2021 and become a champion and stuff like that. Who you feel had a great 2020 in AEW?
That's a good question, because I feel like there aren't like a lot of answers, to be honest with you, because I feel like some people did good work. The problem with AEW, the funny thing is, the problem with AEW is that they have so many, like literally everyone on their roster is really, really good. So it's kind of hard to have someone stand out as being on that next level. Like I feel like everyone is already at that level, whereas in WWE, if someone breaks out of the pack, it's like, oh man, they're special, they're the MVP, because everyone else is so underutilized, where it's actually kind of hard to come across someone who breaks free from the pack and is the best part about the show. AEW, I feel like the entire show is worth watching. Not everything, obviously. Their women's division is still a very big work in progress, very much so. But the tag team division is great. They brought in FTR. They had a great series of matches with the Bucks and Hangman and Omega. Hangman and Omega were probably their two. Well, I would say three people were their biggest MVPs. Hangman and Omega were tag team champions for most of the year. Omega's now world champion. He was kind of flying under the radar for most of the year, but even in the tag team division was one of the better parts of the show. Hangman's character arc in 2020 has been fantastic. The Young Bucks have been pretty consistent. They've had a really good year. And John Moxley, and not just because he was world champion for most of the year, but their booking him was near perfect. I mean, the guy only lost one match in 2020. MJF did too, and MJF did some really good work this year, but I feel like they kind of fell off with him after the Cody win back at Revolution in February. Jericho, I just feel like Jericho hasn't had a great year. I feel like he was doing great work as a world champion, and then after he lost the belt, the Inner Circle have looked like complete fucking losers. The Orange Cassidy feud was a complete waste of time, and I enjoyed it, but like he put over Cassidy twice, and Orange Cassidy ain't doing shit right now, so how much did it really mean? And the MJF stuff right now is good, but I feel like overall he has not had a great 2020, at least compared to last year. But yeah, John Moxley, probably the biggest MVP, being world champion for most of the year, headlining a lot of their pay-per-views, winning the world championship, getting over, remaining popular. And some of his world title defenses were better than others. The Jake Hager match wasn't particularly exciting, but the Brian Cage match was really good. The Brody Lee match was great. Had a couple good matches with Darby Allin that were fantastic. MJF match was really, really good. Had some really good TV matches as well with Eddie Kingston and recently Kenny Omega. The guys had a great 2020. And it's cool to see John Moxley really positioned as the face of a franchise the way that he wasn't in WWE. And he really took the ball and fucking ran off with it. So right. I would say John Moxley was their number one MVP. And then right below him, Hangman and Omega are probably at the same level. And then right below them would be, again, at the same level, probably Cody and the Bucks. Because I feel like they haven't been at the tip-top spotlight of AEW in 2020, but they're always consistent. Cody is like when he was TNT champion, he had a lot of good title defenses. He was defending the belt almost every single week, made it feel important. He was a top-tier babyface, a great star. And the Young Bucks, love him or hate him, are always consistent in the ring as well. So I would say those are the biggest MVPs of the year. And Britt Baker, too. She really broke out as one to watch in their women's division.
So, in your opinion, the best AEW pay-per-view in 2020 was?
Ooh, this one's tough because I feel like they had 4 pay-per-views: Revolution, Double or Nothing, All Out, and Full Gear. All Out was absolutely the weakest. Absolutely. I remember watching that show and
I heard about that one.
From AEW standards, it was not. It sucked. From AEW standards, it was not good. I've seen worse pay-per-views, but from them, that was the weakest they've ever done. Double or Nothing was fun. If people said Double or Nothing, I agree with that. I just feel like Full Gear was a consistently great show from 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, whatever. That was a consistently great show. And then Revolution it was more consistent than Revolution, but I might give it to Revolution just because of the tag team match between the Bucks and Hangman and Omega was great. Moxley and Jericho was really good. And the crowd that night was on fire. So, man, it's between Revolution and Full Gear. I'm going to say Full Gear because I feel like there were more matches that were better, and it was just a consistently better show. But Revolution was a fantastic show, too. So either one of them, I would probably say Revolution, but Full Gear was very good. So I'm really torn on the two.
So Revolution had a crowd. Full Gear did not.
Yeah, Revolution was back at Leap Day, February 29th, earlier this year.
Okay.
And then Full Gear did have fans, just not, as many fans as Revolution. Revolution was in Chicago, so it had a very hot crowd. I remember that.
Best WWE pay-per-view in 2020 was?
I got to go Royal Rumble. I feel like the Royal Rumble again, and I might just be, thinking with rose-colored glasses here just because that show had a crowd on it. But I feel like that's a novelty at this point because we take it for granted. Now that there's no fans, the shows are drastically different. And I said before, they don't make or break shows, but they do make a big difference. And specifically for a show like that, where we had the two Royal Rumble matches, both of which I thought were great. We had Becky Lynch and Asuka on that show, The Fiend and Daniel Bryan. Even Roman Reigns and Baron Corbin had a really, really good match. King Corbin, whatever. I think Bayley and Lacey Evans was kind of But overall, I thought that was a terrific show. The McIntyre win was amazing. That was a great way to close out the show. The Edge return, the crowd was hot. That would probably be my pay-per-view of the year for WWE. The other three that come to mind are WrestleMania, because they made the most of the bad circumstance, and there were no fans, but it was 2 nights. They had 2 cinematic matches that were good. More matches delivered than not. And it was a fun 2 days overall. SummerSlam was great. That was their first pay-per-view in the Thunderdome. Again, a consistently good show. It was capped off by the Roman Reigns return. No match really stood out as being overly special, but they had Asuka and Sasha Banks was terrific. Drew and Orton was terrific. The Fiend won back the Universal title. Again, Roman Reigns returned afterward. That was a really special moment. That was a really good show. Bayley and Asuka also had a great match. And then TLC, which we just had a week and a half ago. Again, another consistently good show. 2 great TLC matches. The Inferno match, I actually enjoyed. I'm probably in the minority on that, but I enjoyed that. Charlotte Flair returned, and the Raw Tag Team titles changed hands. So I really can't complain about that show either. So I would say any of those 4, but if I had to pick just one, probably the Royal Rumble. That really was, I thought, a very special show.
The Edge return feels such a fucking long time ago.
It does, yeah, absolutely.
It's like, wow, that happened in January, and we're about to embark on January now. Like, wow, that was a whole year ago. Like, it's crazy, man.
It's wild. It feels like a decade ago at this point.
And I feel like the Rumble gets the nod almost by default. Because you ask a fan like me, I'm gonna go with the show that has fans in it. Now, they had the Chamber, which was good, that I was there for in Philly.
That was a decent show.
Yeah, but Rumble it's now we're next month is the Rumble.
Well, I'll say this much: I wouldn't, just because there were fans there, I wouldn't say that automatically wins it. For the Rumble, it does.
This year, yeah.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm saying, for example, we had Chamber, but we also had fucking Super Showdown as well in Saudi Arabia before the pandemic. Would I put SummerSlam or TLC before Saudi Arabia? Absolutely. No. Those shows were way better. I would say just because Saudi Arabia had fans, because doesn't make it a better show. But for the Rumble, it does. Chamber, I'd have to go back and watch the whole thing. I thought it was a decent show, not overly must-see or newsworthy, but I didn't think it was a terrible show. I remember that show. But yeah, the Rumble wins automatically just because, not only because there were fans there, but because they made that show. Like, you watch the Rumble, they reacted to everything from the Drew win, the Edge return, to the Keith Lee appearance. It was just a very fun show, and I love the baseball stadium setting as well.
Right. Since I asked you about MVPs for AEW, I know again we mentioned no Brock, no Becky, no Charlotte, no Roman for half of the year or the whole year. So you seen people like Bayley, Sasha Banks, even Randy Orton step up in many ways to hold down the company until these people start coming back.
Yep.
And who do you feel was the MVP for WWE / NXT during this post pandemic era? Who do you think stepped up the most?
Well, like I said, Drew McIntyre. I think he really
Yeah.
killed it this entire year. He was champion for better part of the year. Only lost 1 or 2 matches, I guess. One to Randy Orton at Hell in the Cell, then again to Roman Reigns at Survivor Series. But his matches have been great. My only issue with the McIntyre booking is that he never and still hasn't had a defense of the WWE title that main evented a pay-per-view where he won. He hasn't main evented a lot of pay-per-views this year. He main evented Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, which are obviously the 2 biggest wins. But he didn't main event Money in the Bank. He didn't main event the Backlash pay-per-view. Didn't main event Extreme Rules. Didn't main event SummerSlam, Payback, Clash of Champions, or Survivor Series, or TLC. And he was on every single one of those shows except for Payback. So to not main event any of them was disappointing. Yeah, he main evented Hell in the Cell, but he fucking lost to Randy Orton. So but he has been a very good, he has been absolutely one of, if not the best part of Raw in 2020. Really cool to see him really rise up to the occasion, and it works. It's not like it's just a matter of, oh, you got to put the belt on someone new. Be careful what you wish for, because that's what they did with obligatory Jinder Mahal, shot at Jinder here. They put the belt on Jinder, and it fucking sucked. Just because it's a new guy doesn't make it good, okay? So they did that with Drew. It worked. And I'm very happy that they did that because he's been the best part of the show all year. So I got to say Drew McIntyre. Right below him, though, would be Bayley, Sasha, and Asuka. Specifically Bayley and Sasha. Asuka, her booking is very inconsistent. Bayley and Sasha have been largely positioned as stars every single part of the year. Even Bayley now, despite not being champion anymore, she's feuding with Bianca, hasn't missed a beat. Sasha, I would say the real women's wrestler of the year for WWE or just overall is Bayley. She really grew into the heel role. She wasn't a natural heel, but she really grew into that role. She made it work, and it was a lot of fun to watch. So, and then Sasha's always been good, but she wasn't really given the ball until becoming SmackDown Women's Champion recently. So I got to go with Bayley. But Sasha and Bayley made those early empty arena shows bearable to watch. They were very good. So any one of them, Pat McAfee was, he came into the picture late, but him on NXT has been great. Keith Lee had a pretty good year. The main roster run has been very up or down, but he's had a pretty good year. Maybe not the MVP, but he's had a good year, specifically in NXT. Adam Cole had a great first half of the year as NXT champion. That's really about it. I'm sure there's more. I'm not obviously Roman Reigns, but he came back into the picture as a heel in August. So I can't really say overall because it's only been 4 months. But Roman Reigns would be a top candidate as well because he's made SmackDown must see the last couple of months.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's Drew, Bayley. Like if I had a top 5, I would say Drew, Bayley, Sasha, Roman, and you just fucking mentioned Nick person's name.
I would say Asuka.
Yeah. But I think was crazy that him being there so long. I think Orton's up there too.
Oh, I'm sorry. How did I forget Randy Orton? Yeah, I'm sorry. I would put Orton.
Come on, Graham. You watch more than me.
People poop on Orton, but I gotta say this. This is probably the most interesting he's been as a character overall for the entire year in probably 10 years, 10 or 11 years. It's been a long time since he's been a consistently good, engaging, exciting character. And I know exciting and Orton don't really go well together. People don't really put those 2 words in the same sentence more often than not. But Orton, maybe not so much recently, although I have enjoyed the Fiend feud more than I thought I would. That Edge feud, I feel like people have really downplayed it. The Edge feud was the best part of fucking Raw for the first 4 months of the year. I mean, it was fantastic. Every single week, Orton was out there fucking killing it. Whether he was attacking Edge, RKOing his wife, going after Matt Hardy. Did we forget about that? That was back when Raw had people, but the segments that Matt Hardy and Randy Orton had were fantastic. I mean, Orton was killing it, literally, dude, and then every single week basis. And yeah, the Edge matches, the first one I didn't really care for. The second one was great. And then even after that was over, the Legend Killer stuff was amazing. The Legend Killer stuff over the summer, he made a Big Show feud bearable. Like, I mean, how does that even happen in 2020? He worked well with Big Show. He had the Ric Flair partnership there for about a month or two. How are we forgetting about that? That was awesome. And then their segment when he RKO'd him, I don't know if he RKO'd him, but he like low blowed him and he kicked him in the head before the lights went out. That was amazing. The Christian stuff was fantastic for as long as that lasted, which wasn't long. The Shawn Michaels bit was well done. Orton, up until I would say SummerSlam, was like one of the best parts of Raw, easily. People forget about that because the McIntyre feud kind of ran its course and they kind of dragged it out longer than it should have. But Orton he put over Keith Lee at Payback. Orton has had a great 2020. The Edge match at Backlash was great. He and McIntyre had a great match at SummerSlam. He put over Keith Lee at Payback. He put over McIntyre again to have him lose the WWE Championship back to him. Him and The Fiend had probably the best Inferno match I've ever seen at TLC. I got to go with Randy Orton as one of the best people of the year. Probably not my number one. Definitely not my number one. But if we're making a top 5 here, who is the fourth person you mentioned? Oh, Roman Reigns. Okay, so I would probably put him and Roman are tough because if Orton's been here the entire year, so I might put Orton above Roman. But Orton, we really can't be sleeping on Orton here. And I know, like, obviously he's been around forever, but this is the best that he's been in at least a decade, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, shit, I fucking reminded you.
You did. I don't know how. Just because he hasn't. I was gonna say he hasn't been the best part of Raw recently, but even the Alexa Bliss stuff has been really, really good. So yeah. So I don't know how I forgot about that.
So I would have Bayley, Sasha, Drew, Roman, and Orton. And you already know how I feel about Sasha. I think just her and Bayley together really, like, they were the anchors because they were on Raw, SmackDown, NXT for so long, and it's like they were individual champions, they were tag team champions, they were on the show twice, 3 times a night. Like, they really depended on those 2 females to come on the show and really produce while your main characters are out. Roman don't come back till August, so by that time you talk about 4 or 5 months into this pandemic stuff. It's really about Bayley and Sasha the whole time, and also McIntyre. So those were the and you mentioned Asuka. Those were the 4 main anchors, as well as Orton. You know what I'm saying? So, like, they really held it down. I'm surprised with Bayley being the longest reigning SmackDown Women's Champion, and then her and Sasha were together. Then the breakup, which is a big moment for the year. So I think those, for me, were the 2, like, the main anchors for all the shows.
I agree. I mean, the SmackDown Women's Championship picture was very exciting with Bayley and Sasha. They really elevated the tag team division too, because they showed up in NXT a bunch of times. You don't really see people do that a lot as tag team champions. Nia and Shayna never fucking did. I don't think Flair and Asuka will. I mean, maybe they will. I don't know. That'd be cool if they did. But so yeah, it would be nice, or it has been nice to see Bayley and Sasha really kill it this year. And it's cool too because they took a big backseat in 2019, 2018, even 2017. They really have not been at the forefront of this division in a long time. For the women, it's really been the Becky, Charlotte, and Asuka show for the last 3 years. So it's cool to see Bayley and Sasha really rise up and do great stuff. And Bayley, again, becoming a better heel than I ever thought she would be. Because early on in 2020, I thought she sucked as a heel. And it wasn't really her fault, but the dialogue that I don't know if it was her fault or whatever, but the material that she was given to work with was atrocious. Even especially when there were fans there, she's actually benefited from there not being fans, to be honest with you, as far as her promos are concerned. But when she had to get serious, she had to get serious. When she beat up Sasha, it was a great angle. The build of their match at Hell in a Cell was pretty good. They had one of the best matches of the year at Hell in a Cell for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Sasha on the Mandalorian. She's the SmackDown Women's Champion right now. Her momentum is through the roof. This is the most meaningful. I don't know if meaningful is the right word, but the most buzzworthy, I guess, Sasha has been. I guess when she first came back as a heel last year, that was great too. And that was for a short period before she kind of fell on the back burner again. This is the most consistently special that Sasha has been in probably 4 years, when she was the Raw Women's Champion and they did the draft and blah, 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 the Charlotte feud. That's a long time. For someone as good as she is to be on the back burner for that long, she could have left the company. She could have quit last year when she left the company for a couple months. She didn't have to come back, but she did. And props to WWE for finally realizing what they had in Sasha, putting her at the front of that division, because she's the best that they have. And it's cool when they push other women like a Lacey or this girl or that girl. But Sasha's the best that they have. And they got to push her. They got to give her a meaningful title reign before anyone else. And she finally has had one in the last couple of months. So, yeah, Sasha and Bayley have been the best part for the women in 2020. And I love Asuka. Asuka's had a great year overall. Asuka, to me, it feels like she's just kind of filling in for Becky. And if Becky was there, she wouldn't be at the forefront of that division. And Asuka's had a lot of good matches, but the most important that Asuka was during the Bayley and Sasha feud, because Bayley and Sasha were all over the place. Asuka felt important, and when that feud was over, Asuka was kind of an afterthought again, and she's been an afterthought ever since. She's a dual champion right now, and she still doesn't feel special. So, yeah, Bayley and Sasha had a great year.
All we need is Sasha to have a win at WrestleMania now.
Yeah, she's 0-5, I think. So hopefully, I don't know. If she faces Bianca, I would love to see Bianca win, but she doesn't have to. Bianca could look great in defeat, and Sasha can finally win one. So I think it's a win-win if they do that match either way.
Also, for me, for 2020, the Hurt Business has been very cool and different and interesting. So putting those guys together with MVP, Shelton, Cedric, and who I'm missing?
Bobby
Lashley. The main guy. Lashley, Cedric, MVP, and Benjamin. Just seeing that faction come together. I didn't see it in the beginning, but as time went along, I'm like, okay, I had you on. I'm like, this could be like the new Nation of Domination. They have all the gold, or majority of the gold, looking like Evolution from 2003.
It's the Nation of Evolution.
The Nation of Evolution. I like that part. We'll see where it goes.
I agree. They've been great. I didn't put them in my top 5 just again because they haven't been around long enough, and they only really joined forces in the last couple of months. It's kind of like a Roman Reigns thing, but they would absolutely be an honorable mention. They've been one of the best parts of Raw recently. The booking's been really good. Bobby's been built back up, which makes me so happy because before recently, a year ago, the guy was getting married to Lana, and he was a complete fucking joke on the show. They're finally building him up to be a meaningful threat. I mean, MVP is another MVP of 2020, no pun intended. I mean, This guy came back in the Rumble as like a quick throwaway entrant, like we see all like Santino came back in the Women's Rumble this year. Oh, it'd be a cool spot if we bring back MVP. The guy went from being a one-off in the Rumble to a producer backstage to now being a full-time performer on the show. I mean, this guy has literally done it all in 2020. He had a spot in the Rumble. He wrestles almost every week. He's a manager. He's been a backstage producer. He's a commentator. He was a commentator for Main Event at one point in the year. He's done a lot of shit. He's done a lot of shit in 2020, and he's had pay-per-view matches against Apollo Crews for like the United States Championship. I mean, the guy's had a great 2020, and he's constantly delivering. The guy's 40-something years old, and he might be doing the best work of his career right now as well. I love the Hurt Business, and I'm really excited to see what WWE has in store for them in 2020.
For both companies, you tell me your favorite storyline and your worst storyline for both companies.
Oh, man. For WWE, I think the worst has got to go to the Rollins Mysterio stuff. And again, it started out promising enough, but like two things was what really made it bad. The eye for an eye shit was terrible. The matches were great. That's the problem. The matches in the feud were really good, which people aren't going to remember because the storyline was so bad. The eye for an eye stuff was atrocious. And then when they got Aaliyah Mysterio involved after SummerSlam and Dominic Mysterio being involved was fine. Rollins and Dominic at SummerSlam was terrific. But the matches that followed were not. And some of the matches they had were they just dragged it on for way too long. They got Murphy involved. Now Murphy,
you'll take the Rollins Mysterio You'll take that as the worst more than the retribution stuff?
Okay, Retribution. Retribution. I
Yeah, come
forgot about
on, man.
Retribution. I'm sorry. There's a lot of matches that happened this year. There's been so much. There's been a lot of bad stuff, but I think those top two have highlighted. The Raw Underground wasn't bad. It was just kind of a waste of time.
What happened to it? What happened to it?
They just stopped giving a fuck about it. And they just discontinued as we all expected they would. But
Damn.
yeah, Retribution's got to be number one, and then Rollins Mysterio. For like worst storyline is Retribution. Worst feud is Rollins Mysterio.
Right.
There's probably more I'm not thinking of. The
How about
Otis and Mandy had a great
Otis winning the
storyline.
Money in the Bank? How about Otis winning the Money in the Bank? How about that?
That's not a bad storyline because Otis was on fire at that point. The Otis Mandy Rose storyline might be for best storyline of the year. Honestly, I think it might be the Otis Mandy Rose stuff because that stuff was phenomenal, especially when there were crowds there for the first 5 or 6 months. And you got to remember too, that immediately transitioned into Mandy versus Sonya, and they had a great women's feud over on SmackDown. So I don't think a lot of people are going to be saying that, but I think because none of them really mean anything right now. Otis means nothing. Mandy Rose means nothing. DeVille's not on the show. Tucker is split away from Otis. But for the first 6 months of the year, actually 8 months if you count SummerSlam with the culmination of Mandy versus Sonya, it would be that. They were the best part of SmackDown. So either that or Roman Reigns and Jey Uso. The whole Roman Reigns thing is probably the best thing to come out of the year. I wouldn't say there's one particular storyline, though. It would probably be Otis and Mandy, but a very close second would be what I just mentioned. I mean, I actually did a whole article about like the best storylines of the year, maybe about a month or two ago. I forgot I think I put this one at number one, but if not that, then like I said,
about Edge Orton?
Maybe that is number one. There's been a lot of good stuff too. This is what I'm saying. Edge and Orton would be up there. Otis and Mandy. Okay, I'll probably say Edge and Orton, Otis and Mandy, Roman and Jay has been fantastic. The Hurt Business has been really good. I'd probably put that towards the bottom of best storylines, but that would be on there. And then also Drew and Randy had a great feud. The whole Legend Killer thing with Orton has been fantastic. So that's why Orton deserves to be in the top 5 of MVPs for WWE in 2020. And Bayley and Sasha too have also had a great feud. So it's really hard actually. They've had a lot more like good feuds and storylines than they have bad. So at least from what I can remember. So it's hard to say, but I'll probably put Edge and Orton number one just because that was really what carried Raw for the first 4 or so months of the year.
What about AEW?
Probably the Hangman Omega stuff and how they've really furthered that storyline over the year. They've been tag team champions for most of the year. They split up, lost the belts. Omega went on to turn heel. The subtleties in him turning heel before he actually did were great. So I'd probably go that is their best storyline. If not that, then I don't know. I'm not sure. MJF and Cody had a really good storyline before the match. What'd you say?
I said, well, I wouldn't know anyway.
Yeah. The Bucks and FTR built up their match really, really well. So maybe that one. That was a really good storyline. Cody and Brody Lee had a fun, short-lived feud. Man, I don't know. I didn't really give a shit about Jericho and Orange Cassidy, for example. Moxley and Eddie Kingston had a really good feud for as long as that lasted. Man, I don't know. So, yeah, I would probably put those. Like I said, the top one would probably be the Hangman and Omega story. Would probably be number one. The Bucks and FTR really did a great job building that match for the most part as well. So that would probably be number 2 or 3. But yeah, I would say Hangman and Omega number 1.
When I said I was missing one more person in my head about MVPs, real quick.
Yep.
I forgot about Adam Cole.
Okay.
So as far as the NXT goes, Adam Cole, who was the longest reigning champion of all time, I think he lost the belt in the summertime, right? June.
Yeah, in July, the Great American Bash. Yeah.
Okay, so Orton, Sasha, Bayley, Roman, Drew, and I say Adam Cole were like the main anchors for the programming of 2020. So I can't forget about Cole being the longest fucking champion in history of NXT and not give him the nod, you know?
Yeah, I would put Balor on that list as well because Balor has been a part of NXT almost all year. He got hurt recently and he was gone for the last 2 months, but he's had a phenomenal 2020. I mean, the guy's been back in NXT. He's had great matches with Johnny Gargano, Damian Priest, Timothy Thatcher, Kyle O'Reilly, Johnny Gargano. I already mentioned him, Keith Lee, among other people. So I'd probably Cameron Grimes for one too. So I would probably put Balor over Cole just because Cole was champion for the first 6 months of the year. And he really, I don't know.
Mhm.
That's tough. That's tough because even when he wasn't champion, the Pat McAfee feud was good. And their match at TakeOver 30 was one of my favorites all year. And
Right.
the Undisputed Era versus Pat McAfee stable storyline recently was also great. And the War Games match was good too. So I might put him at he would probably be the MVP, just barely inching out Finn Balor. And then at number 3 would be Keith Lee, because Keith Lee had a great, I mean, yeah, he was called up in August, but he was in NXT for the first 8 months. He won the North American Championship. He held the title for literally that entire period up until he got called up. He won the NXT Championship while the North American champion, beat Adam Cole for the title. He beat Johnny Gargano multiple times. He beat Finn Balor, beat Dominik Dijakovic, Cameron Grimes, Damian Priest, lost the belt to Karrion Kross, and then moved up literally the next day. So I would put Keith Lee on that list as well of people who have had a great 2020, specifically in NXT, because the main roster he kind of fell off a cliff.
So to you, what was the best NXT show of 2020?
TakeOver Portland probably was the last and only TakeOver of the year that had fans. There's 2 that come to mind. They had a lot of great takeovers. The takeovers are always very good. TakeOver 31 was a great show. The top 2 takeovers were TakeOver 31, which was headlined by Balor and O'Reilly. They had Candice and Io on that show as well for the women's title, Gargano and Priest, among other matches, Kushida and Velveteen Dream. That was a consistently great show. The only reason why I give Portland the upper hand, and I don't think people are going to say that as the takeover of the year because it has been so long, but that was the show of the year for them because it was also consistently great in that they had the Broserweights versus who did they face? Broserweights and Undisputed Era was one of the matches. Adam Cole and Velveteen Dream, Gargano and Balor had a great match. Keith Lee and Dominik Dijakovic, and Tegan Nox versus Dakota Kai. It was an absolutely amazing show, as was TakeOver 31, but TakeOver Portland had a crowd, and they were a fucking hot crowd. So that's why you have to go with that TakeOver as the TakeOver of the year. But at the same time, though, I really, really, really enjoyed Halloween Havoc. Halloween Havoc was an amazing show a couple of months ago, and that wasn't a TakeOver, that was a TV special. But it was really, really good. And the overall Halloween theme I thought was fantastic. So I think that one's just fresher in my mind because it happened recently, and TakeOver Portland felt like a century ago. But TakeOver 30 or TakeOver Portland will be my show of the year for them. Halloween Havoc comes very close because that was a terrific show.
I don't think I saw Halloween Havoc. And you know me, I'm a big Halloween Havoc fan. I just don't recall watching it. I think the last NXT show that I've seen top to bottom in full, sound like a fucking long time ago, was In Your House.
And that was a really fun show too. Not my show of the year, but that was a fun show too. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the Adam Cole and Velveteen. They had a ladder match or like an outdoor backlot brawl kind of shit.
Yeah, it was like a parking lot brawl. Yeah, exactly. They made the most of it. I thought it wasn't the greatest cinematic match all year, but it was good. And they had the women's main event on that show was really good. The triple threat women's title match main event was good. Gargano and Keith Lee had a good match. Balor and Priest. And overall, above any of that other stuff I just mentioned, this set was fucking sick. So just to bring back In Your House for one night was really, really cool.
So, in your opinion, the best moment for AEW and the best moment for WWE was
AEW. Maybe the Sting debut. The Sting debut was great. And again, that's just fresher in my mind. But that first pandemic show when Matt Hardy debuted and then Brody Lee debuted earlier on in the evening, that was awesome. Like, oh, Brody Lee debuted. That means Matt Hardy's not the exalted one. Matt Hardy, I guess, isn't coming in. And then he debuted on that same show anyway. Again, no fans, but I thought that was one of their best moments all year.
right.
The Omega heel turn was well done. I thought that was a great moment. That would be up there. The Sting debut was special, so that's why I would say that as well. I'm sure there's other moments, but those are the ones that come to mind. Moxley winning the championship at Revolution was a cool moment. So any one of those. For WWE, I can't think of anything else but Edge returning. Edge returning the Rumble was the moment of the year for WWE, so they peaked early in January. And if it wasn't that, then Roman Reigns aligning with Paul Heyman when he said, "Oh, it's not a prediction, it's a spoiler." And then he turned over and the camera pans to Paul Heyman on the couch with Roman Reigns on SmackDown, and that's how they went off the show. Mm-hmm. One of the best endings to a SmackDown I've ever seen. So either of those two moments, but I would probably go with the Edge one because it made for such an emotional moment that I'm sure everyone rewatched at least a dozen times over after it happened.
So before we wrap it up, obviously AEW did not provide their top 10 matches. Hopefully they do. But I have the top 10 matches according to WWE here.
Yep.
I think you've probably seen it.
Yeah, I read the list the other day. Yeah.
I want you to tell me whether you agree or disagree. And if you disagree, what would you replace it with?
Okay.
How about that? All right, number 10, Finn Balor, Kyle O'Reilly from NXT TakeOver 31.
Fantastic match. I would put it higher on the list, but it belongs in the top 10. I think it belongs in the top 5, but yeah, that was a terrific match.
So that should be a match that I should check out at some point in time.
Yeah, it was a fantastic match. Absolutely check it out. Yeah, especially before they have the sequel in a couple of weeks of New Year's Eve. I think that's next Wednesday is the next match.
Okay, so now this one, Rhea Ripley, Charlotte Flair, WrestleMania 36.
Yeah, that was a great match too. That belongs in the top 10. Definitely.
And people are still mad that Charlotte won the match.
Yeah, I mean, the people saying like, I could see. I know a lot of people who are like, "Oh, I didn't like that match." I'm like, you didn't like it because Charlotte won. If you're saying you didn't like it because it wasn't a good match, then you must be blind because it was a terrific match. Considering that there were no fans there either, and they still had a great match, is very impressive. So that belongs in the top 10 for sure.
And you know what's crazy? That was the time where he had no fans, but now there was no sound effects either. So like now you're watching Raw, SmackDown,
yeah, exactly, yeah,
crowd noise, and to just. Back then at WrestleMania, it was just an empty center,
literally like an empty warehouse. Yeah,
it was like whoa, like
yeah, it was shocking.
Walter and some guy I'm not even going to pronounce from
Ilya Dragunov. Yeah, that would be top 5. That was a phenomenal match. That is also worth checking out. I would put it higher on the list.
How do you say his name?
Ilya Dragunov. Yep,
Ilya Dragunov. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, the J is silent.
7, Drew McIntyre, Randy Orton Clash of Champions.
Get the fuck out of here with that shit. I did not want to see that. I saw that. I read the list and I had other people concur. Why is that? First of all, it shouldn't even be in the top 10. Second of all, it doesn't even belong in the list itself. Not even in the top 25 would I put that match. There were other matches not on that list. I don't even think Rollins and Dominic Mysterio was on that list from SummerSlam, and that was an amazing match. I don't even think that's on there at all.
No.
And if you're going to put any match on that list from Orton and Drew, and Orton and Drew have had a lot of matches this year, put the SummerSlam one match on there. That match was great. That one or the one on Raw where Drew won back the belt. That was also a great match. But I would put the SummerSlam match. The SummerSlam match was terrific. The Clash of Champions ambulance match, it was good. It wasn't bad, but it definitely was not number 7. I don't know why that's up. I don't know why that's up so high.
All right. So you disagree with one of them. Number 6, AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan from Friday Night SmackDown.
Amazing match. Absolutely worthy of being in the top 10.
Intercontinental title ladder match from Clash of Champions.
Little high, wouldn't put it in the top 5, but yeah, that Sami Zayn, Styles, Hardy triple threat from Clash of Champions was fantastic. One of the craziest ladder matches I've seen, but I wouldn't put it in the top 10.
No. Wow.
Oh no, actually, maybe if it was in the top 10, I would put it at like number 10. But I don't know. Okay. There are other matches that that we don't say here in the top 10 that aren't included that should be in the top 10. Like the men's Rumble, spoiler alert, is not in the top 10, which makes no sense to me because that was one of my favorite matches all year. But I would probably replace it with that.
Number 4, Drew McIntyre, Roman Reigns from the Survivor Series.
Great match. Definitely not worthy of being in the top 5, but it was a terrific match though.
But it belongs in the top 10.
Yeah, I'd probably put it in the top 10, maybe. Just looking at other stuff I don't think was included. if it was in the top 10, it would be 8. But yeah, I don't know if I would put it in the top 5. I wouldn't put it in the top 5 actually.
Number 3, the greatest wrestling match of all time. At number 3, Edge and Randy Orton from Backlash.
I'd probably put that at 5 or 4. 3 isn't too egregious. It was a great match. It was a lot better than the Last Man Standing match, which I'm glad they didn't include because it wasn't that good. It was kind of boring. This one was great. I really enjoyed the match. Greatest wrestling match ever? No. But considering the bill and considering how they build it and how they built it up and whatever, it was a great match. So again, number 3, I don't know about that, but probably in the top 5, I wouldn't argue with you there.
Sasha Banks Bayley from Hell in a Cell, number 2.
Awesome match. I'd have to really make a list to say if it's number 2 or not. I don't know. I don't know if I would put it at number 2. I remember watching that match, and I don't remember thinking, oh shit, I almost fell over. I don't remember thinking that it was like the best match of the year. So I feel like they just put that at number 2 because it's Bayley and Sasha, and it really should have been. Like, for example, I think their Iron Woman match in the first takeover match from 5 years ago was better than this. So I don't know. I think it was a great match. It definitely would probably put it in the top 5. I just don't know if I would put it at number 2.
Number 1, the Boneyard match, WrestleMania 36, Taker and AJ Styles.
So this one is a little polarizing. I'm not going to argue with it because it was a fantastic match. It was the best Taker WrestleMania match that he's had since the Punk one 7 years ago. I will say that. It was a great way to close out his career. It was the first cinematic match they've done, and it was amazing. It was exactly what it needed to be. It's hard to say that it was the match of the year because it's not really a match. It was more of a spectacle. And like if you're going to put this shit on there, then what about the Firefly Funhouse match? That's not on the list, but it was still a match, wasn't it? Like it's kind of hard to exactly like this wasn't really a match either. It was more of a movie sequence, but I would still put it up there. I think it was a great match. There's other matches I would say are the match of the year more than this. But it's not like, oh man, this is such a dumb choice. Like, fuck this match. It was terrible, blah, blah, blah. It really was a great match. Just, I don't know if I would put it number 1. But it was a great way to close out night 1 of WrestleMania.
Real quick, talk about that Firefly Funhouse because I thought it would have been up here. I mean, 10, 9, 8, it don't matter. I felt it would have been up there because, again, it's not really a match where it's like moves and holds and everything, but you promote it as
they promoted it as a match. So, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it was a match. It says it on Wikipedia that Bray Wyatt beat John Cena. So,
but I felt like out of all the things that they did this year, aside from Taker and AJ the Boneyard, like that Firefly Funhouse showcase was something real crafty, creative, and different. I don't think they can replicate that, and I don't think you can if it doesn't involve a Bray Wyatt kind of character. So like you said, why is it not in the top 10? I don't know, but it should be like an honorable mention. But I hope people don't forget about that kind of match going forward.
Yeah, that deserves to be recognized because people like rewatched it multiple times. It was wacky. It was crazy. It was exactly what it needed to be. It was way more interesting than if they just did Cena and The Fiend straight up. So, yeah, I really, really enjoyed that match. It wasn't really a match, but I loved it for what it was. I thought it was terrific.
Is there top match whatever for AEW?
Yeah, the Bucks and Omega Page match from Revolution is my match of the year. That tag team title match from in Chicago Revolution. That's my match of the year. Bucks and FTR was also great from All Out. Single
was that a regular match? Was that a regular match or like a ladder match or?
These are all regular matches.
Regular, okay.
Yeah. Omega and Page had a really good match at Full Gear. I don't know if it was the match of the year, but man, I don't know. In terms of like singles matches, I really like AEW. The funny thing is that all their matches are good, that it's really hard to pinpoint like a match that was better than the rest. Hikaru Shida and Thunder Rosa had a really good match for the women's title at All Out. God, I don't really know. I really don't know as far as like a great singles, like the best singles match they've had all year. The tag team match was my favorite match of the year from Revolution, bar none. It's hard to come up with like a top 25 for AEW, to be honest with you, because there were so many good ones, but like truly special ones, I can't think of many, to be honest.
Okay, so real quick, from a WWE standpoint, prediction time. So we got Rumble coming up. We got Mania coming up. Hopefully, we get some fans back at least by Mania time. I
Yep.
doubt the Rumble. I think the Rumble will be in that uh Tropicana Field Dome and everything. So, um, who do you think wins the Rumble for the women's side and the men's side? Give me like a top 2, 3 choice of winners. You think?
For the women, I got Bianca. I think it's got to be Bianca. No one else really makes any sense. They could have Bayley win it, but like we've already seen her in the title picture a lot this last year, so I'd say no. Bianca makes the most sense. Could Becky come back and win it? I guess, but she literally just had a baby like 3 weeks ago. Like that just is way too soon for me. In my opinion, I mean, if she wants to come back, I guess, but I just don't see that happening. Or I guess Rhea Ripley could win it too for the women if she gets called up and wins it. That's possible too. I don't see that happening. Bianca, she's my pick. For the guys, I got Daniel Bryan winning. I know he announced himself last week. He was the first one announced for it, but he just makes the most sense. If they're not doing Bryan and Roman in the Rumble, WrestleMania is the next best place. It's got to be Daniel Bryan. If not Bryan, Keith Lee's a possibility. He's getting his WWE title shot next week on Raw. That tells me he probably isn't getting another title shot at the WrestleMania. So Keith Lee he's a second choice, but he's not even like a close second. Like I think it's going to be Bryan. It could very well be Goldberg, and I fucking hope not, because if it is, that's a repeat of the Roman Reigns situation from 5-6 years ago when Roman won instead of Bryan. So I got to go with Bryan. Goldberg would be the wrong choice. Anyone but Bryan at this point, or Keith Lee, would probably be a bad choice. So I got to go with Bryan.
Wow. I could see Bianca. I'm trying to think. I obviously you get Bianca and Sasha at Mania. I don't think Charlotte. I don't think, like you said, Becky. Fucking Ronda ain't coming back anytime soon.
Yeah, so Ronda's a possibility, but I don't think she's coming back. Not yet, anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Right now, by default, I would say Bianca.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody else. I don't see Carmella and you know.
No.
No. For the men, if we and you had this conversation months ago, and we would talk about Keith Lee, Big E could win the Rumble.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, but then he won the IC title, so I don't think it's going to happen yet.
Right. Daniel Bryan could be up there, because Daniel Bryan has been like in the middle, there's this middle gray area like for a long time now. Like, wow, what do you do with him? And there's been talk about he's gonna, like, I guess, retire soon, or like he wants to be the family man going forward. So his time in the company maybe running out at some point in time. So you might want to give him one last run with the belt.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind seeing Roman and Daniel Bryan at a Mania. If it's not, obviously we thought about The Rock, but we don't know if they want to put that match in the possibility of no fans in the arena. They might hold that till next year.
Yep.
So that's still out there. You mentioned Goldberg. Can Goldberg come back and win the Rumble and get Roman at Mania? You know, Goldberg wants Roman Reigns, who's next on that show. So that's an idea. Ain't much left. I mean, it's not like somebody needs the Rumble. I think Daniel Bryan right now needs the Rumble more than like a Keith Lee or Big E or Goldberg. So I'm trying to think about it, but ain't that many people left. Like Orton, he don't need it.
No, he's not gonna work
ready. Do they bring back Cena? I have no idea.
No thanks.
But I'm pretty sure you'd rather see Cena than Goldberg.
Yeah, but Cena's not a good choice either. We've already seen Cena and Roman. I don't need to see that again. Or Cena and McIntyre. No thanks.
How many times though? How many times you saw Roman and Cena?
Only once, but I feel like Daniel Bryan is just a way better. Cena doesn't need to be in the title picture. He doesn't want to be in the title picture, I don't think, anyway. There's no reason.
No, he probably don't need it, but for them, you know, they want a big name to be in the main event of Mania. So it's like, all right, if it's not Daniel Bryan, they go back to the well of Goldberg, Rock.
I don't think they do though. I think we've had the part timers in the main event of Mania for so fucking long. We got to move on from that at some point. We got to have 2 full-time people on the show. Like I think Drew and Roman is a perfect main event for that show, or Roman and Daniel Bryan, or McIntyre and someone else. I don't know.
Right.
That's in my opinion.
So who do you think main events WrestleMania?
I would say Drew and whoever his opponent is, but that's not clear cut. I think Bryan and Roman is the perfect main event. You can have Roman win if you want.
Who do you think gets Drew McIntyre?
I've heard Keith and Brock. Yeah, maybe Brock again, but does Brock win the Rumble? I don't want to fucking see that. I mean, I don't want to see Brock in the main event of WrestleMania again. Especially if there's no fans. Like, who cares? We already saw that. We got to move on.
Listen, I hear you. I'm just letting you know this is what they do. So when it comes to
I know. I'm prepared for the possibility that Brock or Goldberg are going to win, which I think would be fucking dumb, but we'll see.
Trying to think. Yeah, I think those are likely the possibilities right now. You never know what could change in a month or so for the Rumble. Gonna be interesting to see the Rumble in the Thunderdome, though. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see what happens there.
Do they try to add some fans, or you feel like it's just gonna be regular?
For the Rumble, probably not. They could. I mean, it's going to depend on what happens the next couple of weeks, but I don't see that happening. I feel like if that was going to happen, we would have heard something about that by now. It's coming up in like a month, so we'll see. I don't think so.
What kills me is that at least for the Rumble.
Yep.
Like me, I would take down the whole Thunderdome shit. You're already in a fucking dome already.
Yeah.
And you could have utilized that whole area for a Rumble kind of setting. It looks different. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I mean, they had Mania in the PC. That's probably the worst I've seen.
It doesn't get much worse than that, so I'm fine.
So seeing the Rumble in the Thunderdome is going to be wicked, going to be crazy. At least they could have used the Tropicana field to some degree, but I don't think they're going to tear that shit down and rebuild the shit back up. No, I don't think they do with that.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, they'll just leave it up.
At least by Mania, I think it's in Tampa, right, this year?
They haven't announced that yet, but it probably will be. That's the speculation right now.
I don't know. Obviously, you know, on a sad note, we lost a couple guys during the year. Pat Patterson, Brody Lee recently. I'm pretty sure, hopefully not other people. That's the ones I recall.
Oh, we lost a lot of people. Rocky Johnson, The Rock's dad. Yeah. That was before the pandemic, actually. Howard Finkel was another one. Right. Animal from Legion of Doom was another one. We lost a lot of people this year, actually. There's a lot more than I'm not thinking of, but those are the big ones that come to mind.
Listen, man, I hope 2021 is a better year for everybody. Healthy, safe, all the sports. I know they're going back and forth traveling, and this is going to be, I think the wrestling aspect of the pandemic was hit the hardest because it really depended on the crowd. And you can have an NBA game, you can have an NFL game, you can have fucking UFC, but somehow they made it work.
Exactly.
It's like, all right, we don't need the crowd. The wrestling needs the crowd.
Yeah.
And hopefully they get back to that at some point. Start off small and gradually work your way up to where it was back to normal. I thought 2020 was out of their control, but they made the best of it. So in a nutshell, to wrap it up, how would you describe, if someone said, Grant, man, talk to me about wrestling back in 2020. How was it? How would you describe it?
It was weird, but they made the most of it. Like I said, to kind of go full circle here. It was a bad situation that they made the most of it. Not a year I would go out of your way to watch, you know, if you didn't catch a lot of it. But there is stuff worth catching up on from both companies. Like I said, it wasn't completely bad. It was a good year overall, considering the circumstances. Some of the ratings, you know, like Raw's ratings are lower than ever, but some of the content isn't terrible. Raw is just abysmal more often than not, but SmackDown's good, NXT's good, Dynamite's good. So it was a historical and unprecedented year. I know a lot of people have heard that word a million times by now, but it definitely was an unprecedented year that they made the most of, and I thought it was not a terrible year overall.
And last question, what are some some storylines you're looking forward to watching in 2021? Who are some people who you feel like should have a breakout year in 2021?
I don't know. Not really sure. Bianca, I think, should really break out. Keith Lee should have more of a breakout on the main roster. Rhea Ripley, I think, will be a big star in the main roster at some point when she gets called up. Undisputed Era have got to get called up at this point. It's been forever, so they got to get called up. They got to make the move. Other than them, I'm not really sure. There's a lot of people. I think McIntyre will continue to do well. I don't know. I don't really know. I think Keith Lee and Brock should be fun at some point. Roman and Daniel, when that happens, is going to be great. Roman and Seth at some point. Maybe not this year, maybe next year. I don't know. I think that could be a lot of fun. There's a lot of storylines that I think that could be really good given their roster. It's just a matter of whether they make them as good as they have the potential to be. That's the question.
I got real quick. I got one dark horse for the Rumble.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed to seeing it. I want to see if you agree or disagree, or you're like in the middle area. With how the Hurt business is going, do you think a guy like Bobby Lashley can win the Rumble to elevate that group? Now they all have the titles. They don't have a world champion. But do you think they get the US belt off of Bobby Lashley pre-Rumble? He wins the Rumble and maybe go on to Mania. If it's not a Daniel Bryan or everybody that we've mentioned, do you think Lashley is in that dark horse area?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they've been booking him strong for a reason. He's tapped out Hardy the last 4 weeks on Raw, so there's got to be a reason for that. It's not like anyone else is pinning Hardy. It's like he's tapping out Hardy himself. I mean, it could be leading to something for Hardy, but Lashley isn't my pick to win. I would love to see him win. I think that'd be fucking sick. I don't think he will, but he could drop the U.S. title to Riddle earlier on that night and then win the Rumble itself later on. So is it possible? Absolutely. But will they do it? Probably not. I think it'd be cool if we got Brock and Bobby at Mania, or Bobby and Drew again. They had a really good match at Backlash. Then Bobby wins this time. I think Bobby and Drew Part 2 would be great because Drew doesn't really have a set-in-stone opponent otherwise if they're doing Keith and Drew next week. So, all right, I'm an idiot. I mean, they could do Drew and Sheamus, I guess, but I think they might do that at the Rumble. I don't know if I would wait till Mania. I definitely would have Sheamus win the Rumble. I'll tell you that much. Not again.
I can see it. I can see Bobby and Drew. If Bobby was to win, he'll pick Drew. He ain't picking Roman Reigns.
I mean, he could, but Bobby's not going to be a babyface, so you might as well just keep him on Raw with Drew.
Right.
So,
hey, listen, man. That's why we're here. We fantasy book these things. We could be wrong. We could be right. But I think as far as your Rumble prediction, I think we're in the area. Bobby would be more of the shocker because I don't think most would expect that. In my opinion.
Yeah.
But Daniel Bryan could be a way to go. Like, hey, listen, man, you should have won the Rumble years ago, first and foremost, and now we're giving you that chance now, and we'll see how it goes against Reigns. So, Graham, always appreciate your hard work and coming on the show, man. We've been doing this for so long. I think about 5-6 years now. Always great to talk wrestling with you. They can find you on Twitter at a Wrestle Rant. Great work for both Bleacher Report and Fan Side of Daily DDT. You can find me on Twitter at Renny J Cruz, RENDY, the letter J CRUZ. If you're a fan of the show, we thank you. We love you. We appreciate you. Go ahead, download, rate, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff on SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. If you're really a fan of the show, go to ProWrestlingTees.com, buy a t-shirt, show some love and support for the show. Graham, my man, thank you. Thank you for 2020, and look forward to talking with you in 2021, man.
You as well, Randy. Thanks so much for the time. Have a great Happy New Year, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Take it easy.
All right. Adios.
All right.